We're going to be like the plane. I'm going to shut the door and then we're taking off. We're going to shut the door and then we're going to take off. All righty. Come on up, Val, or come on down, or whatever.
Come on down.
Come on down.
All right. Are we ready? Do we need to wait just a second? Okay, I think we're good. Okay, I am supposed to do an introduction. This is always fun. I'm going to read what it says.
She's
on the
probably
sheet,
making up
but-
stuff.
Yeah. Okay, well, welcome everybody. Great, a number in the start.
Woohoo!
Workshop, awesome. This is How Trauma Impacts the Brain. Your presenter is the legendary Kelly Kelly.
Oh, legend.
I had to add to that. and Kelly is a community psychologist and the current director of advocacy and public policy for NAMI Lexington. Yes. Kelly has worked in the mental health field for 30 years. Well, it's gone up since the last time I read one.
Time marches on, Val.
I know. Her key role in advocacy efforts has resulted in the replacement of the 200-year-old Eastern State Hospital. Yay. The creation of the Peer Operated Services in Kentucky. The creation of the Fayette County Mental Health Diversion Court. The passing of Tim's Law. And the impetus for the first juvenile mental health diversion court in Kentucky. Boy, that's a mouthful, but that's awesome.
It's awesome.
Mrs. Gunning has had lifelong depression and PTSD, has had many family members with addiction as well as a son with untreated schizophrenia. A life lived up close and personal with mental health and substance use challenges and survival. Again, let's welcome the legendary Kelly Gunning.
The legendary Valerie Mudd. All y'all are legendary because you're here. If you're like me, it's a miracle we're here. Can I get an amen? Yes, I'm going to. Thank you, Valerie. She's so much my assistant and part of my brain. So I do want to give, even though we're going to be talking about kind of more slanted toward the neurobiological effects of trauma and how it can set the underpinnings for serious mental illness and addiction, I do want you to know the video I was going to show was the thing that I was most concerned about, and for some reason that's not working. And it was a very powerful video, but a very stirring video. I'm sorry we don't have it. But maybe it's for the best. I believe everything happens for a reason, okay? I believe I'm not in charge at all. So, if we don't have the video, we don't have the video. But what I will tell you is that the smallest things, it doesn't have to be a catastrophe in your life, but sometimes the video would have shown you that the smallest things, like a baby not able to get its mother's attention. The video, in case you want to look it up after class, was called Still Face. And it was a long-term psychological experiment that they did with mothers and infants and early childhood trauma. So this isn't going to be like, if you're here expecting a bunch of stuff on how to do trauma-informed care, that's kind of not what we're going to be doing, but there'll be some of it, okay? This is more just about how trauma underpins us for experiencing adverse things later down the road. Cool? All right, everyone knows what trauma is, right? I'm going to give you the classic definition. Trauma results from an event, series of events, or set of circumstances that is experienced on an event as an individual as physically or emotionally harmful or threatening, and that has lasting adverse effects on the individual's functioning and physical, social, and emotional, spiritual well-being. Do you understand that what it said? It says it has lasting adverse effects. So if we had the video, what you would have seen was just the mother not responding to the baby, not being, upset, not being angry, not yelling, not doing anything, just simply sitting there. and no emotional feedback, no affect whatsoever, and the child just becomes increasingly and increasingly agitated and upset to the point of just being outside of themselves with hysteria. Okay? So that's what it shows us. It doesn't, like I said, I think we've been under the mistaken notion for years and years that it has to be something like a bomb dropping on you for it to have effects on you. And what we know from the ACEs study is that that's not true. Adverse childhood experiences go on forward with us. Next slide. All right. Instead of reading this, you guys work with me. Raise your hand and tell me some sources of trauma maybe that you've had or that you know of. Yes. When you were a young child, something happened. Yes. Psychological. Parental alcoholism. Abuse. Yes. Neglect. Yes.
Domestic violence and divorce.
Yes. See? Yes. Go ahead. Two more.
I think what happened is back in the 70s, when I was born, back then they didn't have anything to do with psychosis diagnosis. They didn't have anything to do with psychiatrists or any kind of psychosis test.
Right. There was a lack of access to treatment and there still is. Make no mistake, there still is. On average, it takes a person 10 years to be diagnosed. 10 years. That's a long time. That's a lot of life that happens to us in between. Well, of course they didn't. They didn't know what to do. No one knew what to do. David, you're a psychologist. We didn't even know what to do, did we? Do we yet? So see, we're still what? What are we doing here today? Learning. Next slide. Okay, I do want to talk about the physical effects of trauma. Anybody in here have trouble sleeping? Chronic pain? Breathing problems? Heart palpitations? Tension? Digestive problems? Oh, hello. Chronic fatigue? Yes. Autoimmune disorders. Increasingly feeling anxious for you don't even know why. Come on, you guys. I think it's more than that. Difficult to maintain happiness. Yeah, it's a lot easier here when we're among. Do you see my hand going down? You know, but I don't look that bad off, do I? I fake it pretty well, don't I? I work hard every single day to get my feet on the floor. Do you know what I'm saying? I work hard every single day to beat back the demons. Every day. Every day. And I just want you to know that. I want you to understand that it is a struggle, it is a challenge. Next. I want you to look at this. This is the number of people that experience adverse childhood experiences. So you see over here that we got some group of outliers over here, 36.1% that say they didn't have any adverse child effects. I'm thinking maybe there's some denial going on. Don't know, but it could be. Some suppression, some repression. But look here, people that said they had one, 26%. People that had two, 15.9%. People with three, 9.5%. Or more childhood adverse experiences, 12.5. You add all those ones, twos, threes, and fours up, it's about 60-some% of people. I have the privilege of working in the Fayette County Mental Health Court every week, and most of our people score above 8 on the ACEs. The most you can get is 12 or 10. Well, because I added 2 more. I'm going to add 2 more. I'm going to tell you 2 more new ones, and that is race and ethnicity and poverty. I don't know why they're not in there. Because if you are born to certain races and ethnic groups, you have more adverse childhood experiences. If you are born into poverty, you have more adverse childhood experiences. So some colleagues and I are working on trying to get this added into the diagnostic criteria. One of my friends is doing this for their PhD. So hopefully we're going to see some changes to these as they go forward. But what I want you to know is just how prevalent they are. Next. And this just kind of shows this on something like Maslow's hierarchy. I'm sorry the slide isn't very clear, but at the base is adverse childhood experiences. It doesn't say a nuclear bomb dropped on your head. It doesn't say you were in a tragic car wreck. It could be those things, but adverse childhood experiences, disrupted neurodevelopment. This is the real thing that's happening here, folks. Then we have social, emotional, and cognitive impairment. Then we have adoption of high-risk, health risk behaviors. Then we have, I can't even read that. Disease, disability, and social problems, and then early death. Sorry. So, where do we need to be focusing when we're talking about trauma, when we're talking about getting early intervention and prevention, right? We need to start diagnosing people. We need to start really looking at what's going on with folks, yes.
I'll say recognizing symptoms and using coping skills to combat those symptoms.
Absolutely. We need to start, but they won't even do that. I'm going to give you this personal story. When my son was hospitalized at Eastern State for the second time, the treating psychiatrist brought my husband and I in, and he had already been given a diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia, and it was in Alaska. And then when he came here, he was hospitalized twice. But this doctor brought us in, and this is the truth, and it's not a knock on anyone. It's just kind of the way it was back then. He said, well, we think this could be a budding schizophrenia. He was 19 or 20. He must have been 20 because he was at Eastern State. And he said, but it's too terrible to say that. We don't want to label that. Okay? Too terrible. As a parent sitting there hearing that, what are you supposed to think? I don't give a shit what we call it. I just want us to call it what it is and help me get in the direction of getting my child some help. Can I get an amen? If you have cancer, they're going to tell you. No one wants to hear I have cancer, but I want to know so then I can begin to do what I need to do, right? Hand up.
It also feels like whenever you're told by medical professionals and you don't know much about what you're diagnosed with, whenever they say that something is terrible and you're getting that diagnosis, and you don't know that much, you're going to carry the stigma that whatever you're diagnosed with is terrible. And it's going to continue that cycle of thinking that these things are terrible and not something that you can just do.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. Yes, amen. That was a great point. I appreciate that very much. Thank you so much. All right. So I hope you guys can see this. This is talking about some of the most common effects that we see in kids. Addictions, anxiety, PTSD, all the things we already talked about. More marriages, partner violence, low life satisfaction, teen pregnancy, self-harm, violence, greater challenges with parenting. Now, what do you think happens to these kids that are raised up in these chaotic environments?
Their learning gets disrupted.
Right, because why? The amygdala, the little thing that controls our emotional responses and our fight or flight and all of those things, the amygdala here in the primitive part of our brain gets amped up. Even in the baby, in the video that we would have seen had life worked out, you know, even in that baby, you could see the stress mounting and mounting and mounting to the point that they were in a tantrum state. And so when that happens, our neurobiology is getting wired. It's getting soaked in all of the stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, all those things are building up, but there's no resolution because it just keeps on going and going and going. So you're stuck in this cycle in your old brain. I'm going to teach you something that's so cool. This is one of the happiest things I ever learned, believe it or not. Okay, everybody raise your hand. Everybody put your thumb here. Everybody put this part over like this. Everybody turn your hand like this. It's your brain in a hand. See? Here's the spinal cord coming up to the basal cord, to the base of your brain. Here comes, if you open up your hand, this is the limbic system, the amygdala, everything that drives our survival, our fight or flight, right? If the bear's chasing us, this is what's going to save our ass, okay? Right here. But the thing is, we don't need it all the time. We don't need it all the time, but what happens is when it gets hardwired from an early age, it's hard to detangle that and to stop that without intervention. So because here's what happens when you're amygdala driven. And that's what happens to people with PTSD, complex PTSD, a lot of other mental health issues. Addiction is trauma. You show me an addicted person that doesn't have trauma, and I want to see him. Because just the very fact that you're an addict is traumatic, because it's messing with your brain. It's hard to survive out there if you're an addict. So if you're amygdala driven in the old brain here, in our gut, you cannot have any connection while you're offline to your prefrontal cortex, this evolutionary part of the brain that develops until people are 25 or 26 years old. When you're in this brain mode, survival mode, you can't access your thinking brain. Isn't that an aha moment for you? No. Can you speak up just a tiny bit?
Like when you're torturing with addiction and mental health, do you damage your frontal lobe or your amygdala or your limbic system?
Yes, I think so. Yes, absolutely. David, do you have anything to add to that? I'm going to my friend who's a doctor who didn't want to help me with the video. So now I'm just going to keep going to him when I don't have all the answers. No, I love him. He's one of my dear friends. But instinctively answer that question. Let's answer it. What do you guys think? Based on what we know, what would you say is the answer to that question?
Yes, but I was wondering if it could be repaired. I mean, I was an addict for like 24 years.
Oh, yes. What's the big news we learned not too many years ago is this wonderful word, neuroplasticity. That means the brain can heal itself. That means we can create appropriate neural connections by changing the neural pathways.
I think they don't call it frying your brain for a reason.
Well, it's neurons that, what is it the saying? That something wired together, fire together, right? That's the thing I'm thinking of. So yeah, they don't call it frying your brain for nothing. There's a reason they put that egg in there and fry it and say this is your brain on drugs. So that's very, very important. What I want you to know here is the amygdala, which is our threat system, which tells us to stop, get out of here, run, all those things, is active before birth even. So let's think about that if a mom is being exposed to domestic violence. Pardon? Yeah, it is. A healthy diet's important. Want to move? Okay. Here we've kind of already talked about that, but we've already talked about what happens when the limbic system's fight or flight stress response is repeatedly activated. That's what we just covered. So when it's repeatedly activated, your brain is soaked in all those stress chemicals and hormones and all that stuff. Do we think that's good for our brain? No. Yes. We can move on to the next slide. So there's two parts of our nervous system involved. We have the sympathetic nervous system. That's the one that's getting us ready to take fight or flight. It raises our blood pressure, all those things. It pushes us with the adrenaline. And then the parasympathetic nervous system is responsible for tamping down that stress response. But if the stress never goes away, what do you think happens? Our brain is cooking in all those stress hormones and chemicals. Do you think we can pay very good attention if we're offline to our prefrontal cortex? If our brain in our hand is offline, if we're just going down here in our old primal brain? Think about how many kids have been diagnosed with ADHD, ADD, hyperactivity, all those things. You think about all that and then you read about all this and then you think, there ain't no way all these kids have that. I think honestly, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, so please don't think I am. I'm not saying those things don't exist, but if you look up attachment disorders and you look up the symptoms of ADD and ADHD, they're pretty much the same. They look the same. And based on all of this knowledge that we're learning, I don't think they have good attachment. How could they? How could you if your mother's being abused, or if you're divorced, or if you're neglected, or all those things are happening? Please hear me. This is not a blame the parents thing. This is not that. This is just pure biology. Nobody wants to be in a domestic violence situation, okay? Nobody. I've been in one, believe me, you don't want to be there. Nobody wants to, live with people who are addicted, who put you at risk because of their addiction behaviors. When we know better, we do better, right? So hopefully this is about learning, and that everybody's not ADD and ADHD. Some people may be, I don't know. And then I began to be alarmed at how many people were being diagnosed as bipolar, when really there's a big, huge trauma foundation that goes back years and years and has continued on and on. I'm not saying go tell your provider, oh, this lady said that I don't have bipolar. You might. But I really hope they're also finding out what kind of trauma you've been through. And my friend Valerie always tells me, it's not what's wrong with me, it's what happened to me. Everybody say that. It's not what's wrong with me. Please remember that. As a peer support specialist, you're going to have people sit down in front of you, and the first thing I do is ask them how they are, how they're doing, how they're feeling, what do they need, and I validate. Everybody say that word. Validate, validate, validate. Okay?
It's not finding validate.
What?
It's not finding validate.
Oh. Yeah. Shh. Don't make me bring the hook in. Usually I'm the one that gets it. Today she's making a run for her money. All right, yes. Okay. We're going to talk about toxic stress a little bit, because toxic stress is really chronic stress. And what happens when if you can't get out of it? What happens? We already talked about it. Your increased glucose, your shutting down of the digestive system, increased heart rate, high levels of stress hormones. They just sit there and build up. And it's become what's known as toxic stress. So you want to talk to people about what are their stressors? What's going on? And you want to what? Validate. Of course you are. How else could you be feeling with all that going on? No wonder these things are happening. So constant validation as a peer support specialist, you want to validate and affirm because they're going through it. You all already know that. And if they're not going through it, they've already been through it and they can't turn it off. Can I get an amen? Amen. Is this what you guys see? All right, next. All right. This is what it feels like. Now, how many people have had these things? Trembling, pounding heart, lump in the throat, racing. Anybody get racing thoughts? Anybody get intrusive thoughts? Especially when you're trying to go to sleep at night. Just this random crap. Boom, boom, boom. It's because you're already geared up. Got it? Even if you might think you're not, some of us pack all this subconsciously. Some of it's working on us all the time and we don't even know. Yes, question? Comment?
I found out, I had to look it up. I'm moving right now, working on the process of moving down here to Lexington, only about 3 hours away. And I'm just going through a lot of stress and, a lot of trauma and different things. And I just recently found out something that I didn't know as much about stress responses. I wake up checking with the trembling. I know that trembling like throughout your day is normal. Well, not normal, but
Not normal, guys.
But I've woken up like in tremors and in shakes, and that's something I didn't know.
You may be having nightmares. You may be having nightmares and just not be able to recall them. And the other thing that happens is if you're having nightmares, you can literally hold your breath. You're really literally there like in a flashback sometimes. I know that's happened to me. And it's just so hard. So when they say in the old stress theories back to the days of Hans Selye in the 70s and 80s, they say however long you spend up in a stress response, in the throes of a stress response, it takes your body the same amount of time to come down. Okay, let's think about that for a minute. I have spent 20 years, 20 years in a stress response body, coping with the traumas that happened to me. And I didn't even know they were traumas for the longest time. Didn't even know. I thought all families were like that. I thought everybody got beat up and had addicted people in their life that put them in danger. And I thought everybody's son tried to murder them. No, I didn't really think that. I knew that was wrong. But the thing is, so you're sitting there thinking, so is it going to take me 20 more years just to get back to baseline? No. What it's going to take is accurate diagnosis, someone that understands trauma and trauma-informed care, someone that can help me learn skills like DBT skills, which we'll be doing this afternoon at 1:30 if you want to come and join us. We'll be talking about ways to tamp down the nervous system. Tamp it all down so that you're not up on the ceiling all the time. Not for 20 years, I hope. Next. Here's some of these things we were talking about. I want to see if we've shock and disbelief. Does it ever shock you when you look back and think about what happened or what happened to you? Yes. It's shocking, isn't it? If someone else were to tell me my story, I would feel so wanting to ease their suffering if I was listening to my story. So really think about this. Shock and disbelief. I have a hard time sometimes accepting that my own son tried to murder me. That's not an easy thing to accept. And probably every person in here that has trauma probably has something just as horrific for you. Helplessness, right? We learn helplessness if we're growing up in this environment, if we're exposed to this on a regular basis. Many times we're too young to protect ourselves. Many times we don't know what to do. Thank you for your patience. I love to talk to people and I love to share. This is sometimes a hard topic for me, but I do it anyway. I do it anyway because I want you to know that nothing has to be perfect. Nothing we do has to be perfect. As a peer specialist, as a psychologist, as an advocate, as an activist, nothing has to be perfect. The only thing I would tell you is it has to be authentic. The care, the interventions, the interactions bring your heart. When I was growing up and going to school and getting my master's degree, they told me you had to be clinically removed, clinically objective. How in the hell are you going to heal people in their heart with that approach? I can't do it that way. I never could. Because if you've been through it, it hurts too much to see someone else in it. It hurts too much to see someone else flailing and trying to figure out. For so many years, I thought I was just crazy. Nuts. I thought, man, there's just something wrong with you. But it wasn't what was wrong with me. It was what happened to me. So let's say that again. It's not what's wrong with me. It's what happened to me. So, with the computer dying, the movie not working, I think we did pretty well. I hope you got my point. I was a little scattered, honestly. When your technology doesn't work, it's not fun. So I would like to ask if there's any questions or comments. Yes.
When I was growing up, and this happened to me when I was an adult, I had really bad sleep paralysis. And my dad was a doctor, and he told me that that was from all kinds of, that my brain was not the way my body was. Do you think that was from the
I would venture to say, let's put it out to group wisdom. Based on everything we've heard, you think there's a connection between her trauma and her sleep paralysis? Especially in people that have been abused or sexually abused by caregivers as young children, that's very common. I'm not a doctor and I don't play one on TV, but my hunch would be to say yes, and I believe the group agrees because we have group wisdom about these things. It wasn't on the list, that's why I thought that probably should. I have not seen it on lists, so you're right. But see, things are ever evolving, right? And who's going to evolve them? We are! Everybody say we are. Okay, any other questions or comments? Yes.
So I just have a comment. So my situation is kind of similar and stuff. I didn't realize it when I was looking back and stuff, because I thought my situation was normal. I thought everything about what happened to me and stuff was normal and stuff. Then I started looking back on it and I realized, oh, that's not normal and stuff. What my dad did to me, my living conditions and stuff like that. It was never normal, but I feel like you have to accept what happened and stuff, and be able to process it, and be able diverge from it, not move on, not forget about it. You still remember it, but move forward past what happened. Instead of letting it bring you down and stuff, let it move you forward and let it make you a better person.
Very beautifully said. This afternoon, and if you're coming to the DB Skills, that's some of the things we'll be talking about, is how you turn the mind. It's called radical acceptance. And acceptance never means agreement, okay? Let's get that clear. Because you accept something does not mean that you agree with it or that you endorse it. It means it is what it is, and it was what it was. And please hold in your heart one thing always: hope. I believe when people know better, they'll do better. Dr. Maya Angelou says that very well. When people know better, they do better. I don't believe people can act on things they don't know. I don't believe that parents set out to hurt their children. Maybe some do, I don't know, but I don't want to believe that, maybe. Maybe that's the more accurate thing. Any other questions? No? Yes.
Thank you for explaining that. That helped me a lot. All the whole presentation really.
Brain in a hand is great. Just remember, if you're down here acting in your amygdala, your front line, your computer's offline. Okay? So you need to bring yourself back to yourself. Tamp it down, and we'll learn those skills this afternoon at 1:30. All right? Yes.
I do have something to add.
Okay, could you speak up just a little bit, hon?
So I do have something to add and stuff to what I was saying before. If I'm assuming a bunch of people like having users like me in here. I don't. People say you gotta forgive your users and move on and stuff. I would not say that. I would say accepting what they did and stuff, seeing their point of view and stuff, but you don't have to agree with that. You don't have to agree with what they did and stuff. Because I know my dad and stuff, he probably got abused and stuff, and then he took it out on me and stuff. But I still don't forgive what he done and stuff like that, because he shouldn't have taken it out on me. And that's fine, that's acceptable. If anyone has abusers and stuff, you don't have to forgive, but you can accept what they did and stuff. Become a better person, and also get the help that you need because you're talking about it and being confident in talking about it. It's never like wrong or whatever to talk about what happened to you and stuff. Most of the times we need to tell people how what happened to us and stuff, so that we feel better and that so we can finally heal and process everything.
Yes, telling your story can be very healing. It can also be very upsetting. It can also be very triggering. I love what he says about forgiveness. Forgiveness is for who? For you. And write this down. Hurt people hurt people. I know you've heard that. There's no truer statement. All right? I really appreciate you guys being here. I thank you for listening. I hope it was helpful. And we'll be back here with some ways you can work on this issue at 1:30. Thank you so much.